Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We're just going to give it a little bit longer in case anybody else is joining, and then we will start. Thank you for your patience. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for this BSI and ISO webinar on building success in your organisation. We are going to look at the importance of agility and business continuity today, and we're going to begin with a short bit of housekeeping. This is a listen-only webinar. It's being recorded and you will not be able to speak. However, we do want it to be interactive, so please communicate with us through the Q&A function. You can ask us questions, you can make comments, and if you have any technical questions, also put them in there and our technical team will help you. We will do our best to answer your live questions throughout the webinar. Please don't wait till the end. And this is CPD recognised, so do ask for a certificate via the feedback survey after the event. The slides and access to the recording will also be shared with you once you fill in that feedback survey. Thank you very much. We are now going to a video.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Hunt, Chair of ISO Technical Committee 176. Our committee is responsible for the standards affecting quality management and quality assurance. ISO TC 176 is comprised of experts in quality management from around the world and includes participating members from 92 countries and observing members from 32 countries. Our committee and subcommittees are responsible for 21 published standards. Importantly, our work also directly supports 4 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The need for standards continues to grow in a VUCA world. The volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity created by global interconnectedness, rapid change, and technological innovation has resulted in organizations needing the benefits of standards to deliver excellence more than ever. About a year ago, our committee undertook to elevate the discussion about how existing standards can help users improve quality in their organizations. In addition, the committee felt it is important to communicate the positions on developing future trends in quality management. The Quality Day webinars were born out of these objectives. I am pleased you are able to join us today and know you will hear important discussions from our esteemed panel of experts. The 3 topics today are future concepts in 9004, innovation with emerging technologies, and why people are at the heart of sustained success. Each session is live, but the sessions will be recorded for distribution after the event. I encourage you to actively participate in the sessions. The panel members are looking forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you for attending and enjoy your Quality Day.
I would like now to introduce you to our panel and to myself. My name is Sally Swingewood. I'm a Lead Standards Development Manager at BSI and also a very active participant in ISO TC 176 Quality Management. If all of you could now turn on your cameras, that would be fantastic. Jeff, I will come to you first. You've already introduced yourself, but if you want to say hello.
Thanks, Sally. My name is Jeffrey Hunt. I'm chair of ISO TC 176. I'm also a participant in the Standards Council of Canada in setting their national strategy. My day job is as CEO of Shea Global, an international consulting company.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Adrian, please.
Hi, I'm Adrian Siddle. I'm from the University of Wollongong. I lecture here and also the Academic Program Director for Supply Chain Management. I also am involved in the Mirror Committee, the Australian Mirror Committee of TC 176, and I'm looking forward to today's session.
Thanks for being with us, Adrian. Takeshi, please.
Hello, I'm Takeshi Nakajo. I'm working at the Chuo University and teaching quality management. I have been engaged in research on total quality management, especially prevention of human error in design and development, manufacturing, and service provision. I'm a member of the Japanese Society for Quality Control and the Deming Prize Examination Committee. I have participated in TC 176 as a Japanese delegate since 1991 and was involved in 2000 revision of ISO 7001 and 2018 revision of the ISO 9004. I look forward to discussing about the sustained success in a challenging business environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Takeshi. And finally, Isaac, please.
Good day, everybody. Good morning. Depends on where you are. My name is Isaac Sheps. I'm from Israel. I'm retired. Was CEO in companies in different countries in the world for many years. And at the same time, also, I would say, I worked in the area of professional in quality management for many years. And in 27 years in TC 176, participated in different revisions of 9001, and I was the project leader of ISO 9004-2018. Takeshi was together with me. And now, as retired, I have a public position. I am the chair of the Central Committee for Management System Standards in the Israeli Standard Institute. So welcome. I hope you enjoy our meeting today.
Thank you very much, Isaac. And before we begin to mine the extensive knowledge of our panel today, I'm going to ask Jeffrey to just tell us a little bit more about ISO TC 176, the Quality Management Technical Committee.
Thanks, Sally. ISO Technical Committee 176 is responsible for the international standards and focused on quality management and quality assurance. Our committee is responsible for 21 international published standards. The ITC 126 is also entrusted with the advisory role to all ISO and IEC technical committees to ensure the integrity of the generic quality system standards, and also for the effective implementation of ISO and IEC sector policies on quality management system deliverables. Next slide, Sally. Our committee is comprised of 92 participating members, 32 observing members, and 32 liaison organizations. The main focus of the organization is collaboration and ensuring that all voices from all countries are heard on issues and discussed. Gaining consensus from these many parties is important, no matter where they're coming from, what type of organization they represent as well. It's important that we discuss these issues and ensure that we have consensus on all matters. Next slide. It is worth mentioning that the technical committee is made up of a number of groups within the organization. Specifically, there are 3 subcommittees. Subcommittee 1 is focuses on concepts and terminology, primarily is responsible for ISO 9000. Subcommittee 2 is focuses on the actual quality management systems and includes 9001, responsibility for 9001, 9002, 9004, and 10005, 6, and 7. And subcommittee 3 is focusing on supporting technologies and is all of the 10,000 series standards. In addition to the actual subcommittees are a variety of different task groups and task forces, and are focusing on a number of specific areas, communications for all matters related to TC 176, as well as brand integrity, which is a very important topic for our organization at this point, to make sure that all of the standards are understood, how they're intended, and just making sure that they're being executed in the way that the standards are intended to be done. Emerging Trends, which is the committee that was actually responsible for this whole webinar series, to make sure that we are discussing and bringing to light the topics that may be of interest in the future, as well as Spanish translation and auditing practices. And then there's a Chair's Strategic Advisory Committee known as CSAG, which provides advice during the year to the committee and to myself to make sure that we have information that's going on in the world around standards, specifically around quality management. Next slide. This is a list of all of the standards that are currently published by TC 176. I won't read through all of them. The key ones that are probably familiar to most are 9001 and 9004. But there's also a number of standards are all dependent on this work as well. So sector-specific committees like IATF 16949 for automotive quality management, as well as ISO 13485 for medical devices, are examples of standards that are also based on the work that we do at TC 176. It's important to note that there are many other committees within ISO and organizations outside of ISO that depend on the fundamentals of the work that we do. It should also be mentioned that for all this work is done primarily by volunteers and is across the world with some participants from ISO organizations, but it's primarily with volunteers, and we do thank them for all the hard work that they do bring. And you'll see some of those volunteers today on the call. Lastly, Sally, if I can just address the last slide, I think it's also important for everyone to know that we are. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave that to you, Sally. Sorry, I'm out of sequence. Go ahead, Sally.
I'm sorry, I think we're missing a slide, but we will come to it, Jeff.
Okay.
If you want to just say a few words, I think you were going to say about where people can follow our work.
Yes. So you can go to to ISO.org for information about ISO in general, but also you'll find the TC 176 website there. And recently we've also set up a LinkedIn group for quality management and the website address will be following, I think somewhere at the end of this slide, if you go to LinkedIn and search quality management, you'll see our group there. And we are looking for any information you have or you're requesting or any dialogue. We are trying to be actively involved in the community and trying to get our message out in terms of what we see going on in the quality management sector. Thanks, Sally.
Thanks, Jeff. And as the session goes on, we'll get that URL into the chat box for the TC 176 website so you can all explore a little further what we're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the task group looking at emerging trends in quality and quality management. As Jeffrey mentioned, it's really important that our committee is forward-looking, not backward-looking. The world is changing, it's changing very rapidly, and although some of the themes that you see on this slide are not new as such, they are increasingly important and they do affect quality management. Sometimes it might seem a little bit removed from quality management, but we have to remember that we operate holistically. Nothing happens in a vacuum. So we have been exploring in this group with our experts subjects like customer experience, other types of people aspects, how important demographic changes for our workforce and for our customers. Today we're looking at agility in this session, but there's also emerging technologies, ethics, integrity, circular economy and all the impacts of the climate crisis. Information is everywhere. How do we handle it? It affects what we do. So that's part of what this webinar series is looking at. It's going into depth. It's having discussions with our experts on these topics to see what they think matters in terms of quality management looking forward. The summary paper from the task group is available on the website now and can also be shared with you after this event along with the slides. If we can move on, please. Thank you. So the first question, our whole series today is about sustained success. What does it mean? Isaac, I'd like to come to you, please.
To set the ground, usually we refer first to success. The success is when an organization is achieving its objectives. So this is success all about. We have objectives. If we achieve them, then we have success. Of course, we have to set the right objectives. This is another point that we should discuss maybe beside it. But when we talk about sustained success, it's actually the ability of an organization to achieve its objectives continuously for a long term at the same level or even better. And as you know very well, there are organizations who are very successful for a short period of time and then sometimes even totally disappear. So we are talking about the ability to sustain the success that you are planning to achieve for a long term.
Isaac, you led the work on the latest revision of ISO 9004. Do you want to say a little bit about that standard, which is very much about sustained success?
Yeah, actually, ISO 9004 in its new version from 2018 set very much, I would say, the model for organizations that are looking to achieve sustained success. The concept, if you follow 9004, is very much about, I would say, stating that in order to achieve sustained success, an organization should meet needs and expectations of all its relevant interested parties. Some call it stakeholders, we call them interested parties in our standards. So actually, just to highlight the difference between 9004 and 9001, 9001 is focused on the ability to achieve needs and expectation of your customers, who is one of the interested parties. So it's very much about your product or service. And 9004 is stating that it's to meet needs and expectation of your customers, it's a prerequisite for your success. It's no way to achieve if you don't have it, but it's not enough. To really have a sustained success, you have to look at all your interested parties, understand their needs and expectation, just determine what is relevant for you, for your organization, and make a plan to achieve all these needs and expectation in some balanced way in order to be successful for long term. So, and this concept is also lays the definition in 9004, it's a new one, of what is quality of an organization. So we define that an organization can be named having quality if it meets needs and expectation of all its interested parties. While in 9001, the quality of product or service if you meet needs and expectation of your customers. So I hope that very shortly I explained what is 9004 all about, although it has many more pages.
It certainly does. Adrian, would you like to add anything about this idea of sustained success?
I really support what Isaac said. For me, sustained success is knowing what people important to an organisation value in the present and the future, and then ensuring that the organisational strategy regularly delivers outcomes that meet or exceed those people's needs. So, yeah, it's pretty much what Isaac said.
Thank you, Adrian. And Takeshi, please.
Thank you. Before talking about the sustained success, let's talk about what business is. According to my understanding, business is about connecting needs and resources to create value for customer and society. This will make customer and society happy, and organization will be able to get benefit for paying a salary and dividend and working on the development of new product services. However, needs and resources change with the time. Therefore, the organization can't succeed by doing the same things and must implement something new to adapt to changes in needs and resources. Toyota people usually say, if we don't change, we will die. I think sustained success is a state where organizations continue to maintain its raison d'etre by doing such adaptive activity continuously. It's not a static state, but a dynamic state where the organization tries to change honestly. Thank you.
Thanks, Takeshi. And if we can go to the next slide, please. I'd like to stay with you for a moment, Takeshi. The business environment is changing very rapidly at the moment. We're just potentially coming out of 2 years of pandemic. Emerging technologies is changing everything all the time. Is this changing how we manage quality? Is it changing the whole landscape for quality management?
Thank you so much. It's a very difficult question. The context of the organization is different one by one. Because of this, an organization can't get good result just by imitating what other organizations are doing. The organization must grasp its own context, determine its own ideal goal, and deploy unique activity towards a goal. To implement this flexibly and speedily, quality management based on QMP, such as customer focus, process approach, and people engagement, etc., is a very good methodology. Masami Ushikubo, ex-chair of the Sanden Group that has won a numerous Deming Prize, he said, quality management is like aiming for a mountain and climbing it. And I think that's exactly what it is. The Deming Prize, one of the quality award, evaluates the quality management of an organization based on 3 criteria. First, organization should establish a customer-oriented business objective and strategy based on its business environment and management philosophy. Second, organization should be suitably utilizing and implementing quality management to achieve the business objective and strategy. Third, as a result of implementation, the organization should have achieved the business objective and strategy and got the organizational ability required for future development. When a business environment changes drastically, the organization must become more interested in the change in the business environment and pay more attention to the organization's ability to flexibly adapt to it. In that sense, quality management also needs to more focus on the changes in the needs and resources of relevant interest party and enhancement of the organizational ability to flexibly connect the needs and resources to create value for customer and society. I think in a challenging business environment, quality management should become more dynamic with focusing on the needs of interest party and organizational ability to meet them. Thank you.
Thank you, Takeshi. And that goes back to what Isaac was saying and what ISO 9004 says about treating all your interested parties as customers in this dynamic world. Jeff, you work with many companies. What are you seeing? How is quality management being affected by the changing circumstances?
Well, I think just maybe to expand on what Takeshi was saying, the change is actually happening at an increasing pace. So not only are we dealing with lots of changes happening quicker and more frequent, that's because of the pandemic, but it was also happening before that. So that means resilience or sustained success in an organization will be challenged on a more regular basis, more continuously. So I think it really emphasizes, it really brings into focus why the work that we do at TC 176 is really important. Organizations need to be evaluating that context continuously. It's not something you can just look at once a year or infrequently. It's something you're going to need to continuously be evaluating. And secondly, you need to be focusing on the standards as a baseline or a framework to assess your organization to make sure it's meeting its objectives and the stakeholders within your organization. Ultimately, you need to be looking at it on a regular basis and using those frameworks to make sure that you're always in the right position to be able to succeed against the changes that are coming at you.
Thanks, Jeff. So, you know, we are beginning to explore here already the importance of agility in our current environment. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Adrian, I'd like to just delve into agility a bit more. Why is it so important?
Thanks, Sally. I think in a world that's continuously changing and facing disruptive events such as a pandemic, organizational agility is really important because you've got to meet these changing needs of the customers and the stakeholders for survival. So to me, agility is about making an appropriate and timely response to the changing environment, and in doing that, giving yourself the best chance of success. So I believe that agility, in improving agility, can be supported by improving the resilience of your organisation and vice versa. So by improving that resilience, you give yourself a stronger chance of success.
So before I let you off the hook, Adrian, what tips can you give our audience? How do you improve your resilience?
Well, I guess what you need to do to improve your resilience is understand where some of your risks are and what some of the things are that can impact and disrupt your business. So some things are known and you deal with day to day, but other things come from left field. And I guess the pandemic's an example of something that can come from left field and be something that you're not expecting. But to improve your processes so that you have alternative routes in your supply chains and you have alternative internal processes to deal with disruptions as they occur is one way that you can start to build that resilience.
Thank you, Adrian. Isaac, anything to add with that? You've worked with a lot of big companies. What do big organisations like that do to ensure they're agile?
I think that I will not repeat, of course, what Adrian said, and also part of what Takeshi about context, and then how you adapt yourself to the context. And as Adrian said, your ability to change rapidly in order to adapt yourself when the context is changing. So this is obvious. And then what big organizations are doing are really assessing what can happen, the risks, the uncertainties, and try to prepare plans if something really happened, what to do and how to implement them very fastly. But I would like to add one point. In very big organization, and those if you follow, who really are resilient and agile, there is a lot of work on culture. Because in order to have this ability to change rapidly, you need a culture of all your people in the organization that are ready to change rapidly. And they are actually coming daily to their place of work, or maybe now remotely from home, but wherever they are connecting, and they know that in a moment there could be a change and everything is okay, and they actually meet this change openly because they know this is part of the way we work here. So I wanted to add this culture part, which is not easy because change is risky. And people are afraid of change because they don't know what will happen after the change. So we must develop this ability of people to embrace change actually, and then they really can become very agile. And the organization will be resilient to all the changes around it in its context.
Yeah, the culture question is a really big one, isn't it?
Yes,
Takeshi,
it is.
Sorry, Isaac.
No, I said it is a big one, yes.
Takeshi, would you like to add anything to what Isaac has said?
I completely agree with Isaac and Adrian. By the way, I think the organization must be sensitive to change. To be more agile, it is necessary to understand the change in the needs and resources of relevant interest party and to consider a new business model accordingly. For example, Komatsu Ltd. Is promoting brand management initiative. Komatsu production engineer go inside the customer side and use the method that they have developed to improve the in-house brand productivity in order to investigate the customer business process in detail. And then they propose a solution to improve the customer process. From such initiative, many outstanding products and excellent service have been born. Second, to respond to change quickly, it is good practice to predict the change and prepare in advance. But in current challenging business environment, it is difficult to predict the change. Therefore, in order to become agile, we should strengthen our organizational ability to respond quickly to any changes. For example, Toyota Motor Kyushu Inc. which won the Deming Grand Prize in 2019, clarifies the organization ability required to respond drastic change in production volume using a simple tree diagram. The top of this tree diagram, loss due to change in production volume. This loss is cascaded down to key performance index, such as a delay in production and the rate of defective product. And then these key performance index are further cascaded down to the process ability, like the number of multi-skilled workers and the speed in work proficiency. They call this diagram the change responsive tree. By enhancing the process ability, including in the tree, they have been able to respond quickly to any changes in production volume. These two is my proposal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Takeshi. If we can go on to the next slide, please. I want us to explore a little bit about business continuity and how business continuity relates to quality and quality management and this whole landscape that we're talking about. Adrian, do you want to come in on this?
Thanks, Sally. To me, business continuity is about having a plan to deal with disruptive events so that you continue to operate with minimum disruption. There have been many disruptive events around the world in recent times. There's the pandemic, blockage of transport routes, sanctions from wars. And I guess, to me, there's three elements that assist in maintaining business continuity. There's resilience that we've talked about with Takeshi and Isaac, recovery and contingency. And I think quality professionals have a part to play in all three of these elements. And just some examples, in building some resilience, there's the cultural aspect that's very important that Isaac spoke about, but there's also the bit about dealing with the potential risks, and quality professionals do this quite well in product capability and making sure that you've got multiple process routes within a business. And then we've got recovery, and quality professionals do a great job in making sure there's proven plans in place to deal with product holdouts and recalls. And then I guess we have contingency, where a supplier is unable to deliver a product, we might have put in place the approval process for the quality of alternate raw materials. So all these things come together from a quality professional to help with business continuity.
Thanks, Adrian. Jeff, have you got anything to add to that?
Just a little, not too much, but just to say that really from a business continuity point of view, an organization can be affected at many different layers. There's legal, environmental, technical, and also obviously quality issues. And going back to Isaac's point about culture, I think if an organization, leadership in an organization creates a sense of that resilience to deal with all those different factors, it will make it easier to apply to all those different potential impacts of where a business can be disrupted from a continuity point of view. So, basically, a basic quality point of view, an organization is trying to get its products and services to at a specific standard to its customers. But in a broader context, an organization has to implement that structured process to deliver on all those different levels of an organization, and they can be disrupted easily. So the culture is a big factor, I think, that allows the organization to address continuity in all levels of an organization, not just from a quality point of view. So I think they're intertwined in a lot of respects.
And yeah, we've explored culture a little bit now, and quality management is very much about providing the products and services that you promise to your customer reliably, right? And in recent times, we've seen a lot of disruption to supply chains. I'm going to come to Isaac. Have you got any tips? How can people ensure that their quality management isn't affected by these supply chain disruptions that come about for all sorts of reasons at the moment?
First of all, I would like to add that the question that we have on the slide is, how does business continuity relate to quality management and quality? So let's first of all maybe just highlight that the ones who are looking for our business continuity is our customers. They are one of their needs and expectation from us as supplier, that no matter what happens, we will continue to deliver the product or service we promised. So why it's definitely in the field of quality management. Now, of course, the source for the issue that created the discontinuity of our business could be different sources, as Jeffrey said. It could be technical, it could be, by the way, financial maybe, and so on. But from practical, those who work in the industry for many years know, most of the issues are actually in our internal issue of performance. What in Japan, Tageshi calls the day-to-day work, the day-to-day performance of people, that they create issues in our production lines or in our product and so on, and then we have a problem. So I think that the real point is that organizations, if they want a tip, is to continuously prepare all the time what they are going to do exactly and rapidly if an issue appears of continuity of their business. And of course, one of these interruptive effects could be that some of the suppliers will not supply you what you need because of the supply chain issue that we are facing from time to time. So that's why you need different sources. You have to prepare what can you replace with what. And if you don't prepare yourself, then it will be a problem. So I would say it in a way like, if I may take an illustration from illness, if you have some very slight symptoms of something, you better deal with it. Because if you wait until it becomes very grave, very serious, maybe it's too late to take care of you. So the same in a business. Look at all the small issues that appear and take care of them all the time and prepare for the moment when something will really discontinue in your business.
Thanks, Isaac. Can we have a comment come in from the audience on agility? A fast reaction to changes only works if you prioritize fast reaction over controlled and classically fixed conditions in your processes. In my opinion, this means that we should clearly distinguish between agile processes and classical processes that need and employ especially controlled conditions. And our questioner would like to know your views. So I'm going to start with Jeffrey and let everybody else have a little think about it, which is mean, but we'll do it differently next time.
So I forgot the question right. I think it was the comparison of classical approach to an agile approach. So I think the going back to the point that was mentioned a minute ago is that I think in general companies need to focus on a more agile approach. Classical approach is good in terms of a framework or a construct, but just the rapid change that people are facing in their organizations today just mandates that we must be more agile in how we address the challenges that every organization faces. So I think while the framework would probably come from a more classical approach, we have to take it in a much more agile and be evaluating, like I was mentioning in the last slide section, on a much more regular basis. I think the market is demanding that kind of frequency or urgency in terms of addressing problems.
Thank you, Jeff. Adrian, have you got anything to add?
Just that there's always going to be tension between reacting at the speed that's required in today's fast-paced environment and the good process framework and control framework that gives you the right answer all the time if you go through and follow it methodically. So in both cases, we're going to have a loss. If we wait to get the perfect answer, we'll have a loss. We'll lose the opportunity. If we move towards moving too quickly and don't focus on the correct answer, then we'll have a loss from waste. So it's about getting the right setup and working through both of those constraints to get the best possible outcome for your business, in my opinion.
Isaac, I want to come to you for a moment because I know this is a conversation we've had quite a few times in relation to ISO 9001, that some organisations feel that agility is not compatible with ISO 9001 and its systems and its processes and the requirements that are in that framework. What's your view on that?
I think that, first of all, I have to say that the question is a very good question. And all organizations are facing this need to balance between, let's say, control and making sure that everything is performed the way they decided to do it, and the need to change very rapidly. And maybe when you do the change, you don't have enough time to put all the controls in place for the new situation. And it will take you sometimes to get to the same level of control you are used to in your organization. But referring also to your question, Sally, and also what you pointed in 9001, I would say maybe, I would say it this way, that if an organization thinks that to follow the procedure, that maybe it's written in 9001 or any other process in their organization, it's more important than meeting needs and expectation, a change in the needs and expectation of anybody around you, then this company will not have sustained success. Because the procedures are there in order to help you to achieve something. But if something that you have to achieve is facing a new situation, you better change your processes so you can meet it. So never be so, I would say, adamant about your processes. And I would say something from my experience, many years, that I, especially on administrative processes, that we tend to have in all organizations, of course, and many times we face the situation that the process is actually serving the process owner and not the customer of the person who needs to get an outcome of this process. So let's put it this way, let's not be religious about a process or a procedure. Let's be religious about the final objective of ISO 9001, which is to meet needs and expectations of your customer and to add and enhance their satisfaction. So if this is your focus, then 9001 is just a checklist. What are the steps you should follow in order to make sure that in any situation you will meet this objective?
Thanks, Isaac. Takeshi, would you like to add anything?
Okay. I'm not sure the meanings of the classical processes, but classical processes, if classical process mean fixed, not flexible process, if so, in current challenging business process, business environment, such classical process does not work well. So we need another process to catch up the changes. But agile process is not there is a chaos. There is no process, but we don't mean, we need a process to ensure the quality. So the agile process, I mean, the process, they have ability to improve by themselves very quickly. So in this sense, I agree with the comment to classify the classical process and agile process. That's all.
Thanks very much, Takeshi. And I do have a follow-up question from one of our attendees. How do we ensure, and I'm going to come to Jeff for this first, so prepare yourself, Jeff. How do you ensure that ISO 9001 auditors, especially in the automotive sector, see it the way our panelists see it?
Well, how do we ensure? I guess as an organization, from TC 176 point of view, our objective is to make sure that we lay out clear and accurate and manageable standards. How we the auditing standard, the auditing side of the standards is managed in it from a different organization. Our objective within ISO is to make sure that we put down in place the clear and concise standards, and try and socialize that through events like this, what we do now, and also working closely with the auditing standards groups and practices to make sure that the way they interpret and know how we are intending those standards to be used. It's hard. We're not an enforcement agency, so we don't actually make sure that they do it, but we try to work with them to make sure they understand what the intentions are.
And we do, in fact, have an auditing practices group, don't we, in TC 176?
It's one of the more active groups for sure within TC 176. And again, like you say, it's to make sure that they know the right tools, they have the right tools to make sure they're executing those auditing practices correctly, and also make sure that all the MIR committees are understanding and how those processes are to be executed.
Thanks, Jeff. So lots of questions coming in around the same theme, so I'm going to keep working through them because I do want to try and make sure we answer everybody's questions. So agility, resilience and sustainability are still common jargons for people working in quality. What approach is advisable for handling disruption to avoid impact on people, whilst at the same time keeping people educated and comfortable with these things? Now that's quite a difficult question. I think I'm going to put it to Adrian.
Thanks, Sally. That's a great question. I'm not sure I have an answer, except that the culture of your business is really going to set up your context for how you deal with these things, and how your people are able to maintain their education and feel comfortable going through different types of change. And I guess I'd probably be looking to Isaac to add from a former CEO's point of view how you actually achieve that. That's not some experience I have in being able to take much further than to say that the culture of the organisation is really key to this.
Isaac, would you like to add something?
I think it is a great question, and I think, as Adrian said, it's all about your people in the organization, what they are used to, and what they are taught to, and what they are taught to, and how. What are, let's say, the behaviors that you are nurturing in your organization? Now, I have to go maybe to something more, let's say, from human sciences, and say that not all people are the same, and not people can adjust the same way to changes. Now, we all know that there are organizations which are facing much more changes in their context than others. This is part of the business in which they are, in the sector they are, and so on. So people who find it very tough to change too much and too rapidly should not go to those businesses. Now, Adrian mentioned me as CEO. In the company as CEO, I would continue to tell the people that I can promise you only one thing in our organization, that you will face changes. Now, if you cannot face changes, please go to another school, because I can promise you it will happen. It may happen daily, monthly, I don't know, but no doubt it will. So it is a continuous kind of communication. The change is there, and also showing that we continuously monitor the context of our organization internally, externally. I mean, as you know, all the components of it, and interested parties to understand what is the next change we must do and how fast it should happen and so on. So there is no easy answer, because, you know, at the end of the day, we are human beings and we react differently to things which are implied on us and so on. But we must have an organization of people who are ready and open, by the way, have an open mind for change.
I'm going to come to Keshi. In your experience, what kind of approaches work to help people in an organization keep up with change and be comfortable with it? Do you have any tips from your own experience?
According to my experience, it's a good method is to promote quality improvement in the organization. If implement a quality improvement in the organization, people used to implement the quality improvement. So in such a situation, people welcome to change in the environment. That's all.
Thank you, Takeshi. And we do have a very linked comment question from somebody else. As agile methods are rooted in continuous improvement, to your point, Takeshi, how important is it to promote a learning environment? And how can this be implemented into a framework like your quality management system? And I'm going to come to Adrian first, please.
Oh, thanks, Sally. There are questions today. I guess from my experience, the projects were a key part of where we're able to get knowledge, have a learning experience, and take the business forward with a continual improvement. So the place that we used to set up so that our business would everyone would keep the system running, and then we take project teams to the side, and the project team would then do the improvement opportunity that we're chasing, and that's where new knowledge came, and that's where we built the knowledge into the business and kept the continual learning happening. And then after a period of time, after we've done one project, then we'd start the next project and have a different team and have different people have a learning opportunity. So from my experience in being able to address this continual improvement and knowledge and learning environment, that came from doing improvement projects.
Thanks, Adrian. Jeffrey, would you like to add something to that?
I was just going to say, and have a continuous improvement process, by definition, you have to be learning. So the organization has to be structured to learn from every incident that comes up. And so I think part of the answer to that question also means that you have to have a way of capturing those lessons learned in every time you've got something new facing you. And then that also, if you have that process to capture those new learnings, you also then, if the organization is structured in such a way that it will remind or teach people through some kind of education program, so that the lessons learned aren't lost in just to the people, as Adrian was just saying. If you have a team that's working on a specific problem, if you don't socialize that within the organization, then only a small number of people are going to have access to that information. So being able to bring that to the broader group so that the overall organization can benefit from those lessons will really help on that continual improvement journey.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Takeshi, Isaac, would you like to add anything, or should we go on? No? Okay.
I have no comment. But human resource development is very important to make people active. But education and trainings, only education and training does not work well. We combine education and trainings and improvement activity. If we connect these two activities, we can make the people more active. That's all.
Thank you. For completeness, Isaac, anything to add?
No, I just fully support from experience what Takeshi said, that the best learning is when you apply also something you learned about. And this combination Takeshi talks about, that let's study a new way and then let's improve with it, something. This is the best way that you really learn something. Otherwise, it could be just something that disappears in your minds after some times. So the application of studying is a very important tool to really embed new learnings.
Thanks all of you. I have a fairly specific question for Isaac on ISO 9004, which I think is quite topical. It's great to update everybody. Why is ISO 9004 not in ISO 9001 requirements? Why is the framework and methodologies in a separate standard when in fact it is about increasing customer satisfaction and stakeholder satisfaction? So Isaac, I know we looked at this relatively recently.
Yes.
Perhaps you can explain to our audience.
Yeah, so I will try to do it as a very short answer because we don't have the whole day, because this is not, it's a long story and people are smiling, my colleagues who were involved in it, but let's make it very clear. We have, let's put it this way. I am an organization, okay? And I need to implement different type of systems in order to meet some objectives. So if I have an objective, as every organization, to meet the needs and expectation of my customers and enhance their satisfaction, that I apply ISO 9001. Now, maybe that's very important for me, and as I talked about sustained success, it should be important for you, but let's take the organization. They have an issue that their organization is really very much involved in environment issues. So you need to implement a system in order to improve how you manage the environment and you don't do anything to impact negatively the environment around you. What you do, you look at different systems. One of them could be ISO 14001, which is environment management. So now you have another system in your organization that takes care of that issue. Now you have issues of health and safety of your employees. So you can look at 45001 and then you put it in place and you take care of your employees. And I can go on like that, on and on, depends on the type of your organization. That already gives a picture that in every organization, you actually have a big system which is combined of smaller systems, each of them taking care of one part of the big objective, which is the sustained success of the organization. Okay, and this is a bigger objective than meeting needs and expectations of your customers, which is one of the sub-objectives of the big one. Okay, so this is why you need ISO 9001 separately to deal with, and 9004 tells you go and look for all the systems you need in order to meet all the other interested parties also needs and expectations. And this is a big difference between the two standards. And this is why they cannot be combined, and also to be practical, to enable an organization, maybe if it's a new one or a small one, to go step by step. So first they start with the product. So they deal with 9001. Then they say, okay, we have to take care of environment. They do something else and so on. So I hope I gave the answer to somebody who asked, which is a very good question. Thank you with this answer, because we are discussing this issue a lot. Now, I would end and say that you can actually look at 9004. It's I would say it's a standard which includes 9001. 9001 is one of the components of 9004 because one of the interested parties is the customer. And in order to meet its expectation, we as ISO would recommend you to implement ISO 9001. And it includes other standards too. Thank you.
This brings us to a very common debate about everybody looks at ISO 9001, don't they? They go, that's the standard. Don't care about anything else. That's the standard, because that's the standard that you can certify to. And for some organizations, that's what it's about. It's about the certification. But ISO TC 176 has many, many standards, and they are all of use for different aspects of what you're trying to do. Jeffrey, perhaps you'd like to say a little bit more about the wider portfolio and why it is worth exploring it.
Well, I think Isaac makes a really compelling case where 9004 is the overall organization, and it is comprised of many standards within the ISO family, not just TC 176 for that matter. I think business has become much more receptive to the standards that ISO is publishing. And whether it's TC 176 like 9001 for sure is obviously focused on product and services, but whether you're talking about health and safety, organizational health and safety, environment, IT or data technical standards, all of those form important frameworks or standards within an organization to meet the objectives of 9004. And I encourage all listeners to have a look at all those standards as part of the broader success or resiliency that we were talking about earlier within your organization. I think 9004 is, if you really go through the document, you'll see that it encompasses all aspects of your business, and ISO and TC 176 gives you guidance on all areas of your business or your organization.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Takeshi, I saw you nodding when Isaac was talking, and when I mentioned certification too often being the focus. Is there anything you would like to say about that?
It's a very difficult but a good question. And according to my understanding, requirement is a requirement. Required to make the diversity of quality management. But I have already said the context of organization is different one by one. Because of this, an organization cannot get a good result just by imitating what other organizations are doing. We need some diversity of the quality management. So ISO 9004 is a guideline. I think it works to make the quality management system more diverse. It's my viewpoint. Thank you.
It's very much about one size does not fit all, isn't it? It's, you know, build your own organization in your own way with your own culture for your own objectives. Adrian, is there anything you would like to add to this conversation?
No, I think Isaac and Takeshi and Jeffrey did a great job in summarising it. To me, it's really about those things that they've mentioned.
Just didn't want you to feel left out, Adrian.
No,
but we're going to stick. I know how sensitive you are. We're going to stick with ISO 9004 for a moment. We have one more question. How do you ensure that ISO 9004 stays compatible with the Efqm or Baldridge model? Do you share your ideas for future development of the standard? Who would like to pick this one up first? Isaac?
Okay, this is a challenging question because even when 9004, the new version, was developed, we talked a lot about all these excellence models that were mentioned now, Efqm, Baldridge Award, Deming, which is, I would say, a little bit different, but it's also an excellence program and so on. So, and as Takeshi mentioned, we didn't write an excellence plan. So ISO 9004 is not an excellence model. ISO 9004, it's a guideline of the, I would say, the steps, or if you want, the processes an organization needs to put in place in its organization in order to meet its needs and expectation of all interested parties. And that means to achieve sustained success. Now it has in it some processes and also some, I would say, behaviors that we recommend to have in an organization in order to achieve them. Like if you look at the last clause, talks about improvement, learning, innovation. If you think about it, improvement, learning, innovation, it's also a process, but it's also a behavior. It's a type of behavioral culture you have or you have not in organization. And we talk a lot about innovation and our new concepts and so on, for example, or learning organization and so on mentioned before. So I would say that there is a basic difference in the concept of what is the standards about. Now, I would say something more. Efqm, Baldridge are very much audited as a competition. So am I better than others? And 9004, it's not for competition. It's about looking what it's, as I say, sometimes like a checklist of the pilot in an aircraft. Before he takes off, he has a checklist. He's checking that all the things he should have done are done in order to make sure that his flight will be safe. The same 9004 is a checklist for organizations. Do they have everything in place to achieve sustained success? And this is how it should be viewed.
Thanks, Isaac. And I just think on the question of do we share ideas for future development, this is very much part of what we are doing in the Emerging Trends Task Group. We are establishing communications with these excellence model competition organisations, but also with forward-looking organisations in industry and also with academia. It is very much part of our mission at the moment to make sure that we really are outward looking, that we are engaging with the real world, that we are not just sitting in our committee talking to each other, because there is this huge wealth of knowledge and innovation and experience out in the world. So we are trying to really build these ideas together to share that knowledge. Takeshi, is there anything you'd like to add? You're very involved, I think, with Deming. This question?
ISO 9000 definitely is a requirement. So every organization have to satisfy the requirement. On the other hand, Efqm model, Baldridge model, and Deming model, that's for the company who has already decided to its own mountain and try to climb it. And ISO 9004 and guideline, according to my understanding, located between these two parts, requirement and excellent model. And ISO 9004 provide some turbulence to the quality management in organization. They have already finished ISO 9001 requirement. That's all.
May I add something, Sally?
Of course.
Yeah, I would like to add two actually important. One, as you said, we are connected and we are looking at all the developments and the different groups, but I would say more than that. When we developed 9004, we had experts, of course, from all over the world, and some of them are very much involved in those models, like Takeshi from Deming, but we had people from US who are very much in Baldridge. We have people from Europe that are very, very familiar with Efqm. So we had all these inputs. But I want to follow Takeshi's view on 9004, which I very much support. And maybe I would add and say that one of the differences that in 9004, there is a list, let's say, of things to do, but you are not given a note on how well you are doing them. And this is what is in between. So there is you say, please do it. Now, when you go to Deming, you have to do it excellently, each of them. And in 9004, we are not asking you to do it on excellent or less. We're just telling you, you should have something like that in place. So this is how it goes between these different models.
And 9004 does include a maturity matrix, doesn't it, Isaac? Which I know that some users find very useful.
Yes, it does. And actually, maybe if you reach number 5 there, maybe you are close to get the Deming Prize. Yes.
So do use your maturity matrix. That's what Isaac's saying. Adrian, I wanted to come to you because one of the parts of our outreach from the committee is with universities, and you are based in a university. As Isaac says, we have experts from all over the world and from all sorts of backgrounds in the committee. But why is it important for us not only to talk to the people who come and sit in the committee meetings with us?
It's important to have a voice heard from many different places to get diversity and to get the best possible outcome that you can get. One of the, and communicating in a way that that we're able to do in the committee, where we're able to have everyone have a voice and being able to explain what they're experiencing, allows for a greater understanding and a greater richness of an environment where we can actually move forward. Yeah, I think for me, it's not only the knowledge and what we're communicating backwards and forwards and technically working through, it's also the relationships that we're building and in getting an appreciation of different cultures and different ways of doing things. And I think it's when we bring those things together and find a common understanding that we actually start to get to the real impetus and the real part of what makes a difference. And for me, that's part of what we're trying to do as an academic, is trying to understand what's really working and what really makes a difference.
Thank you, Adrian. And we have had a comment here from the person who asked the question about excellence models, who says, I personally see ISO 9004, especially the maturity measure levels, as a wonderful development tool towards the EQM. So, you know, nice to have some positive feedback. We're glad that you think the standards are working, and, you know, do stay in touch with us when we get to the point where we might be looking at revision if you think there's anything we can improve. Another question here on another topic, and it's about how are our standards, actually this refers to standard, and I believe the questioner is asking about ISO 9001, but let's look at it more broadly. How are our standards in TC 176 going to capture the influence of new technologies like AI, artificial intelligence, and Q 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution? I'm going to ask Jeffrey, please.
You know, it's a great question. I think it goes back to a little bit what you were saying, Sally. This, you know, this emerging trends or future concepts is something that we're very interested in. And I'd even layer that back into your last question to Adrian around the introduction of or the use of academia as well in terms of evaluating all things that are new about the standard. So from a very mechanical point of view, every cycle, and this one we're in a little bit of an odd cycle for renewals, but every cycle we go back and look at what's going on in industry, what's going on in the marketplace, to make sure that we are considering all aspects of it. So when you're talking about quality 4.0, industry 4.0, AI, these are very important topics that quality professionals are discussing now, and will be evaluated at the next revision level, at the next revision time, and looking to see what is the impact that those new trends are having on the quality industry. So I think the question was, how do we do it? Well, it's through discussion, consensus, tapping all stakeholders to see what the impact is, and then that will influence our decisions on any changes that come within the standard that we deliver.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And it's worth iterating for our audience today that ISO 9001 is not in revision at the moment. The ballot of national standards bodies and users did not indicate sufficient appetite for revision at this time, which is perhaps unsurprising, given, as Jeffrey said at the outset, that we do live in this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. So much is going on all the time that perhaps there wasn't an appetite for change in our standards, which are very fundamental to some businesses. But there is always also a flip side to that, isn't there? If the world is changing very rapidly and these technologies are coming through, and the fourth industrial revolution, demographic change, all the other things we have mentioned, how are we going to keep our standards up to date with that if we're not revising them? I'd just be interested in hearing your thoughts. Isaac?
I can just repeat first what Jeffrey said, and you said that, of course, in our working groups, especially set up, we are looking at all those developments and how it can impact or affect, or what should it mean for the new 9001 revision whenever it will be done. And of course, there is processes and so on. It is another how you decide on a revision and what. But I just would like to draw the attention also of the attendee who asked the question that many of the technologies would impact the way you do something or the tools you are using to do something, but you are still going to do the same thing. So if 9001 asks you that you should define what are the needs and expectations of your customers, you may do it with artificial intelligence in the future or with big data or whatever, but you still are going to define what are the needs and expectations of your customers. And if you want to make sure that your product is delivering what it's supposed to be delivered, again, it may be done with during all the systems of Industry 4, that all the computers talk to each other, or with AI, or with machine talking to each other, or as we know from our friend from Cisco, that if you buy a Cisco system, Cisco will call you that you should be aware that there is an issue in your system and they are now repairing it. But still, you have to take care of your customer satisfaction of what's in expectation. So there is a difference between the tools you are using to do different things and the processes you need to have in place. And they are not always diminishing each other.
Thanks, Isaac. Adrian, Takeshi, would you like to add anything? Or shall we move on to our final thoughts?
Just to reiterate what Isaac's saying is, we've had a look at some of the technologies with Industry 4.0, and a lot of the technologies don't necessarily change the way that you get the outcome that you get. So if you've got the same customer needs and you're going and making your decisions about it the way that you are, then things are going to work conceptually similarly to how they are now. The big difference is really with AI. AI is really has an impact with decision making and changing the way that you make decisions, and that for us is an area of focus into the future.
And it is something we are talking about and looking at, right? So again, this comes back to our whole task group on these emerging trends and looking at how they may impact, even if they're not impacting yet, quality and quality management, or if they are already impacting it, how we are managing it, and if we are doing sufficient. So we have about 10 minutes left of our time today. I would like to do a round table. Given the world we live in right now, which Jeffrey set out so well at the outset, I'm looking for each of you, please, to give one piece of practical advice on what organisations can do or begin to do or strengthen to help them build sustained success. I'm going to come to Takeshi first, please.
Okay. I think it's a good idea to start with understanding your organization business environment deeply, that your relevant interest party and their needs and resources. On the top of that, it is better to clarify the ideal goal of business, the activity to create value by connecting needs and resources. And then establish your business objective and strategy. After that, it is better to compare the business objective and strategy with the current ability of your organization, including the partner, and clarify what kind of ability needs to be strengthened. And in order to improve the shortage, it is better to utilize method of quality management, such as policy management, daily work management, team improvement activity, quality management training, cross-functional management, etc., as well as the technology such as ICT. TC 176 has published many standard and supporting documents such as ISO 9004, which you can use to address quality management more systematically. The Japanese Society for Quality Control has already published 6 guidelines on building blocks of quality management that can be used in accordance with ISO 9004 framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Takeshi. And Isaac, your thoughts, please. What advice would you offer?
I think that during all this session, I repeated it again, so I will just say it shortly again. You organizations should acknowledge, understand, and I would say embed profoundly in their behavior and management that it's not enough anymore only to meet needs and expectations of your customers. You must understand also the needs and expectations of all the relevant interested parties and what are the relevant needs and expectations to your organization of those interested parties, and find a way to meet them. Otherwise, you will be out of business. And this is my very basic advice. I would add to it one thing, that no doubt that the context of the organization environment we used to call in the past, is changing more and more rapidly. And because of that, we must develop all these abilities of agility, resilience, of, I would say, willingness to change in our organization in order to meet all the time this very challenging situation when everything we thought that it's correct yesterday is not correct anymore today.
Thank you, Isaac. And Adrian, please.
Thanks, Sally. I think just building resilience and basically working to a point that you're effectively and efficiently gaining knowledge to solve the issues that you have within your business. You're really wanting to maintain competitive advantage with everything changing. So you need to, as Isaac says, meet the stakeholder needs, but innovation and collaboration are approaches that might be able to help you to be able to achieve that as well. So yeah, so I think going out and connecting in with different community groups and different resources that are available is a good way to start building that collaboration and the network that you need to be successful.
Thank you, Adrian. And finally, to our chair, Jeffrey, what practical advice would you offer to organizations?
I think probably just without repeating what my colleagues have said, I think organizations should be setting in place a cycle in terms of which they're evaluating themselves, and that cycle needs to be increased. So they need to be continuously looking at themselves around the frameworks that we were talking about from a quality point of view, the processes, resilience, all of those things. You need to be looking at your organization on a very frequent basis because the markets are changing so quickly. One of the questions that we had earlier today actually was a really good question that I'm not sure if we addressed fully, was around learning. And I think organizations probably need to be looking at how they learn internally as an organization, because there's lots of data, whether it's in their organizations through colleagues that they have, industry groups and so on. But you have to be able to identify that information and then internalize that within your organization. And I think a lot of organizations still have work to do in terms of being able to identify what those changes are that they're seeing in their organization or through their processes, and then internalizing that with their staff and as part of their part of the learning process. So I would say invest more time and energy in terms of learning what you're seeing in your business or organization.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, call back to Isaac's call for culture, work on your culture.
Yep, exactly.
And there is a new ISO TC 176 standard coming out soon on organisational culture. It is guidance, it is informative, but do have a look at it. I'm not quite sure when it's publishing, but I think it will be later this year. And to come back to the point Jeffrey was making earlier when we had a slide missing that we wanted to show you, you can see the work of this committee on our dedicated website. There's lots of information on there. There's lots of guidance documents on there. So please go and explore and read and get in touch with us if you have any questions or comments or feedback. Do join your ISO member body mirror committee to TC 176. You know, we have a lot of countries involved in this work through TC 176, but they are all backed up by mirror committees, and ordinary people doing the work that you do are the people that need to write the standards. You are the experts. The standards are not written by a committee as a block, or by ISO or by a standards body. They are written by ordinary people contributing their knowledge and their experience. So please do get involved. And do get in touch with Mark Schussler, our committee manager, if you have any questions, would like to find out more, or if you have any ideas on what you'd like to see our experts talking about in any future sessions. So finally, it is just up to me to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who stayed with our conversation today. We really appreciate each of you joining us. And huge thanks to Jeffrey, to Adrian, to Takeshi and Isaac for really good conversation. Great questions, but great answers too. Thank you all very, very much. We will be having a second session at 1300 UTC today, which will explore in greater detail emerging trends in quality management. We've touched on agility today. There's a whole spectrum that we will be looking at later on. And then this afternoon at 1600 UTC, this afternoon in the UK, the use of ISO 9001 based standards to manage quality in key sectors. We hope to see you there. Goodbye.